Welcome to this video presentation for the evidence tree of contemporary world. I'm Abdiel Alfonso Rincon Cantú, and today I will talk about various events and concepts of the last 3 decades. To start, the first event I will talk about is the fall of the Soviet Union, the 31st of December of 1991. After its democratization and transition to a free market by Mikhail Gorbachev, ultimately dissolving the USSR and ending the Cold War, but ending as well the bipolar world, starting the unipolar world. But what is the unipolar world? The unipolar world is when most of the power and influence in the world is set by a single nation. But how does the end of the Cold War relate with the unipolar world? It relates with the fall of what was the biggest socialist nation in its time, the USSR. According to Canvas, now most of the international influence is held by the United States, establishing today's unipolar world, even though you could argue China's role in technology and economy is closer to a bipolar world. The second important event I'll talk about is the World Trade Organization, which is the biggest economical organization in the world. It started working the 1st of January of 1995, after most nations of the world signed the Marrakesh Agreement the 15th of April of 1994. It regulates goods, services, and intellectual property internationally. And this event I consider is one of the turning stones of globalization. But what is globalization? Globalization is the growing interdependence of the economies of the world through international exchange of products, services, technologies, money, people, and knowledge. But why did globalization emerge? Globalization emerged because nations already had for centuries made economic agreements between them for their mutual benefit. But during the 1990s, these codependent relations strengthened and shaped the modern life of today. The third event I'll be talking about are the September 11 terrorist attacks on the Twin Towers in 2001, when 2 hijacked airplanes were crashed against the World Trade Center in New York, collapsing both towers and starting the war against terrorism. But what's terrorism? Terrorism is the unlawful use of violence against people or property to intimidate a government to further certain political or social objectives. But in most cases, what caused the terrorist attacks of the 20th century? The inspiration of the Islamic terrorism was Al Qaeda and its objective to replace Muslim countries controlled by the West with Islamic fundamentalist regimes, leading attacks against the US forces and civilians in the United States, the Middle East, and embassies. And lastly, I will talk about the release of the first iPhone, the 9th of January of 2007, when the American company Apple released the first iPhone to the public, revolutionizing the market, introducing the smartphone and mobile computing and communication. When before phones were just for making phone calls, now you could send text messages, annotate dates in a calendar, take photos with the camera and see them in the photo gallery, watch YouTube videos, watch stocks, browse maps, see weather, set alarms, make equations in the calculator, write down notes, send emails, listen to music, and browse the internet. An important milestone in the digital era. But what's the digital era? The digital era is our era, where computers and mass communication is common, which we use daily to study, work, or be entertained. But how has the digital era influenced today's society? This is a huge question. For those of us who were born after the 2000s, it is difficult to imagine a world without modern technology. We are used to use our smartphones to communicate with people, take pictures, entertain us, etc. There's a computer at almost every home we use to work, study, and play. Many have smart TVs and instead of paying cable, pay streaming services such as Netflix or Disney Plus. And many people's lives today depend on the internet.